October 29th, 2018. The Java Sea, Indonesia. 6:30 a.m. Lion Air Flight 610 is climbing into a clear blue sky. Inside the cockpit, the stick shaker is vibrating violently. It sounds like a machine gun firing next to the pilot's ears. The captain is pulling back on the yoke with all his strength. He is trying to raise the nose of the plane. But the plane is fighting him. It is pushing the nose down. It feels like a giant invisible hand is dragging them into the ocean. "It's flying down!" the co-pilot screams. "It's flying down!" They check their instruments. The speed is increasing. The altitude is dropping. They don't know it, but a piece of software they never knew existed has taken control. It is called MCAS, and it has decided that the plane is stalling. For 11 minutes, the pilots wrestle with the machine. Man versus computer. Muscle versus code. But the computer is relentless. It pushes the nose down 21 times. At 6:42 a.m., the plane dives into the sea at 450 miles per hour. 189 people are disintegrated on impact. There are no survivors, just debris and a mystery. How did a brand new plane delivered just 2 months ago kill everyone on board? This wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't pilot error. It was a corporate murder. Planned in a boardroom in Chicago, signed by executives in expensive suits, and hidden from the pilots by a company that cared more about stock price than life. This is the story of the Boeing 737 MAX. It is the story of how the greatest engineering company on Earth lost its soul. Welcome to bad blood business. To understand the crash, we have to go back to a time when Boeing was king. For decades, Boeing was not just a company, it was a religion. Their slogan was simple: "If it's not Boeing, I'm not going." They were run by engineers, men with slide rules and grease under their fingernails. They took risks, but they never compromised on safety. They built the 747, the Queen of the Skies, a plane that changed the world. But in 1997, something happened that infected the company like a virus. Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell Douglas was a failing company run by cutthroat Wall Street types. They didn't care about planes. They cared about shareholder value. When the merger happened, the McDonnell Douglas executives took over. It was a hostile takeover from the inside. Harry Stonecipher, the new CEO, said it openly. "We are going to stop acting like an engineering firm and start acting like a business." The engineers were pushed into the basement. The accountants took the corner offices. Suddenly, the goal wasn't to build the best plane. It was to build the cheapest plane. They moved the headquarters from Seattle, where the planes were built, to Chicago. They wanted to be physically separated from the factory floor. They didn't want to hear about safety problems. They only wanted to hear about profit margins, and for a while, the stock price soared. Wall Street loved the new Boeing, but in 2011, a threat appeared on the horizon. Airbus. The European rival announced a new plane, the A320neo. It was fuel efficient, it was quiet, and airlines were lining up to buy it. American Airlines, Boeing's most loyal customer, called Chicago. "We are going to buy hundreds of Airbus planes," they said, "unless you have something better." Boeing panicked. They didn't have a new plane. Designing a new jet takes 10 years and $15 billion. They didn't have 10 years. They had months. So they decided to do something lazy, something dangerous. They decided to take a 50-year-old plane, the 737, and patch it up. They would slap new giant engines on the old frame and call it the MAX. It was the Frankenstein of airplanes, and that decision would seal the fate of 346 people. The engineering problem was simple physics. The new engines were huge, too huge to fit under the low wings of the 737. So the engineers moved the engines forward and higher up on the wing. But this changed the aerodynamics of the plane. When the plane climbed, the heavy engines acted like a lever. They pushed the nose up, too high. If the nose goes too high, the plane stalls. It falls out of the sky. The engineers knew the plane was unstable. It was a bad design. But fixing the design would take years, so they came up with a software patch, a Band-Aid. They called it MCAS. Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. It sounds boring, but it was deadly. MCAS was designed to run in the background. If a sensor detected the nose was too high, MCAS would automatically push the nose down. It would move the horizontal stabilizer on the tail. And it would do this without the pilot's permission. Here is the crime. Boeing decided not to tell the pilots about MCAS. Why? Because of money. Southwest Airlines had a contract with Boeing. It said, "If our pilots need simulator training for the MAX, Boeing pays us a penalty. A penalty of $1 million per plane." Boeing wanted to avoid that penalty at all costs. They wanted to sell the MAX as exactly the same as the old 737. No new training required, they promised, just an iPad tutorial. So they removed all mention of MCAS from the pilot manuals. They literally deleted the paragraphs explaining the system. They convinced the FAA, the regulators, to let them self-certify the plane. It was a Jedi mind trick. "These are not the droids you are looking for." "This is not a new system," Boeing said. "It's just a tweak." The FAA, understaffed and trusting, agreed. They let the fox guard the henhouse. Inside Boeing, the employees knew it was a disaster. Internal emails released later showed the truth. One employee wrote, "This airplane is designed by clowns who are supervised by monkeys." Another wrote, "Would I put my family on a MAX? No." But the executives didn't read those emails. They were too busy counting bonuses. The MAX became the fastest-selling plane in history. Billions of dollars flowed into Chicago until the morning Lion Air 610 fell into the sea. After the Lion Air crash, Boeing's reaction was disgusting. They didn't apologize. They didn't ground the plane. They blamed the pilots. "These are third-world pilots," they whispered to the press. "They didn't know how to fly." They blamed the maintenance crew. They blamed the censor. They refused to admit that the plane itself was the killer. In private, they knew exactly what happened. A single sensor, a tiny vein on the side of the plane, had failed. It told the computer the nose was high when it wasn't. MCAS activated. It thought it was saving the plane. But actually, it was diving it into the ground. And because the pilots didn't know MCAS existed, they couldn't turn it off. They were fighting a ghost. Boeing issued a bulletin. "In case of emergency, flip these switches." They pretended it was a minor issue. "The plane is safe," the CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, said on TV. "The 737 MAX is the safest airplane ever built." He lied to the cameras, he lied to the families, and he lied to the passengers. And tragically, the FAA believed him. They let the MAX keep flying. 5 months later, March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 takes off from Addis Ababa. The pilots are well trained. They read the bulletin. They know about the Lion Air crash. But 2 minutes after takeoff, the stick shaker starts. The nightmare begins again. The sensor fails, MCAS activates, the nose drops, the pilots fight back. They pull the yoke, they hit the cutoff switches, but the plane is flying too fast. The aerodynamic forces are too strong. They physically cannot turn the wheel to trim the plane, manually. They turn the electric system back on to try to save it. But MCAS wakes up again, and it delivers the final blow. The plane dives into a field at 700 miles per hour. It hits with such force that it creates a crater 30 feet deep. 157 people die instantly. Doctors, humanitarian workers, families, children. Boeing had 5 months to fix the software. They didn't. They gambled with human lives, and they lost. The world erupted in fury. China was the first to ground the plane, then Europe, then Canada. The FAA was the last one standing. They were still protecting Boeing, claiming the plane was safe. It took President Trump to personally order the grounding. For the first time in history, a specific model of plane was banned globally. Hundreds of MAX jets sat in parking lots, gathering dust. And the curtain was pulled back on Boeing's culture. Whistleblowers started to come forward. Ed Pearson, a factory manager, testified before Congress. He described a factory in chaos. Workers were overworked, tired, and pressured to speed up. "Schedule is king," was the motto. If you stopped the line to fix a defect, you were screamed at. Tools were left inside the wings, wires were cut, metal shavings were found inside the fuel tanks. It wasn't just the design that was bad, the build quality was garbage. Another whistleblower, John Barnett, exposed defects in the 787 Dreamliner. He found that 25% of the oxygen masks might not work in an emergency. When he told management, they told him to shut up. They harassed him. They spied on him. They destroyed his career. Tragically, John Barnett was found dead in his truck in 2024. And suicide, the police said. But he died right in the middle of giving legal testimony against Boeing. The rot went all the way to the top. Congress dragged CEO Dennis Muilenburg to a hearing. They showed him the emails, the clowns and monkeys emails. They asked him why he took a $15 million salary while 346 people were dead. He sat there, robotic and cold. "We made mistakes," he said. "We are learning." He was fired shortly after, but he walked away with $62 million in stock and benefits. Think about that. The man who oversaw the deaths of 346 people got a golden parachute. The families of the victims got a crater in the ground. Boeing was fined $2.5 billion by the Department of Justice. It sounds like a lot, but for Boeing, it was a parking ticket. They charged it to the company as a business expense. Not a single executive went to jail. They blamed 2 low-level technical pilots, the scapegoats. They signed a deferred prosecution agreement. Basically, a promise to be good in the future. But did they change? January 5th, 2024. Alaska Airlines Flight 1282. A brand new 737 MAX 9 is climbing out of Portland. Suddenly, a deafening boom. A door plug, a piece of the fuselage, blows off the side of the plane.